Today, I'm going to be talking about important considerations when hiring a nanny for your home. Lots of times, people think it's just as simple as bringing someone into the home and writing a check at the end of the week, but there are many more considerations to think about. So, tune in to hear what you should be doing when you're ready to hire a nanny.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
So the first thing that I want to talk about today is salary and payment schedule. So when you're bringing someone on, whether you hire as an employee or an independent contractor, you're going to have to determine, are you going to pay a fixed salary per day that they work, or are you having an hourly schedule? Oftentimes, when you agree on a salary, you will pay them that amount whether they work or not. So you might want to be cautious about offering a specific salary rather than paying hourly. You want to determine what your schedule is going to be. Is it going to be paid every week, every 2 weeks, or semi-monthly? Now, a lot of times people get confused on what is the difference between biweekly and semi-monthly. So biweekly is every other week. So for instance, every other Friday is the pay date, where semi-monthly is twice a month. Usually the schedule is the 1st through the 15th, paid around the 21st of the month, although in some cases it can be paid as late as 10 days later. Or you also have the end of the month, that is the 16th through the end of month, where you can be paying around the 5th or 6th of the month traditionally. Of course, weekly makes sense. Every week on a specific day you'll be paying. And traditionally, people choose Fridays as the pay date. So whether you're doing weekly or bi-weekly every other week, you can have that pay date on Friday. If you're doing a biweekly schedule and you have Friday pay dates, usually the week starts on a Sunday, ends the following Saturday, and then you have your payroll running on the following Friday as the pay date. This is important to consider because many people are used to just having the pay period end on Friday and writing a check, but you also want to consider, do you want to offer direct deposit? And if so, there are timing issues if you plan to pay the same day that the pay period ends. This is not possible for it to be done that quickly unless you plan to wire funds, which can become expensive. So my recommendation is either have a biweekly schedule every other Friday, and your pay period would be from the Sunday of one week to the Saturday of the following week, giving you plenty of time for direct deposit to process, even if there's a holiday in there. Direct deposit is also well liked by many people. They don't have to worry about getting a check and cashing that check. It can go directly into the bank, but really, as long as you're paying them on time and the wages that they're earned, either would be acceptable. Now, if you're going to pay for a set amount per day, you also want to be aware of overtime rules in your location. In some states, overtime doesn't happen until they've worked at least 40 hours. But in some states, over 8 hours in a day is considered overtime. So if you have someone, let's say, working for you 10 hours a day, it will be the fact that if they work 5 days a week, they would still incur overtime. But on the federal level, it wouldn't be until they've hit the 40 hours. But again, in some states, for instance, in California, if they work more than 8 hours in a day, then you have to figure out the overtime. So what would happen then if you had someone working 10 hours a day and you just had a flat rate? If you don't take into consideration the overtime, you may underpay your worker and could potentially end up with penalties for not paying appropriately. So make sure you look at what is the minimum wage, what is the amount of overtime that would have to be paid. If they make more than the amount required, they work more than the amount required in that specific day, and make sure that what you pay meets the minimum guidelines. Okay, so if you have someone who is working in your home, in some cases, there may be different overtime rules depending on the duties that they have. So you also want to check to make sure that you're following the correct guidelines. For instance, in California, as I was saying before, it's 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, unless the person is working in a personal attendant type role. And that is then 9 hours a day, 45 hours per week. So again, check the guidelines for the state that you are located in. Make sure you're meeting all of the overtime rules. Now, there are tax considerations as well. There are employer taxes and reporting when you hire an employee. If you don't hire as an employee, then technically you should also be issuing a 1099 every January. But let's focus on what happens if you hire someone as an employee. The first thing you have to acknowledge is it is going to cost you more to hire that person as an employee versus paying as an independent contractor. You are going to have the employer taxes that you will have to pay and workers' compensation in the event that there was an injury that occurred while the person was working in your home. These taxes are basically the Social Security and Medicare match for what is withheld from employees, as well as federal and state unemployment taxes. Now, there usually is a cap on the amount of wages that is calculated for that overtime, but you do need to take into consideration these additional taxes on top of the salary that you would be paying. You also, again, do have to have workers' compensation. Usually, home insurance does not cover injuries in the case of employment, but you'll want to check with your policy to find out if it's needed. So Social Security and Medicare, once again, is matched based on what the employee has withheld from their paycheck. And this is a percentage of the wages. So Social Security is 6.2%, Medicare is 1.45%. Now, again, if you don't hire someone as an employee, then you aren't withholding these taxes. You don't have the match, but this can be risky because there are guidelines depending on, again, the duties that the person is doing that would basically say that if they're in your home doing duties that are basically considered work, they should be hired as an employee in most cases. But once again, make sure if they are hired as an independent contractor, you do plan to issue that 1099 if they make more than $600 in the year. Another thing to consider are the estimated tax payments. As an employer, taxes are paid on your annual return with Schedule H. So you may want to pay to make sure that no penalty is assessed for owing too much. Again, the estimated tax payments are due 4 times a year, and I'll go into this in more detail in just a little bit to make sure you're aware of those deadlines. Now, another consideration is what benefits may you offer? Are you going to have paid time off for vacation? Are you located in a state that requires sick pay? Are you offering personal days? Are you in a state that requires you to have a retirement plan and it's through the state? So for instance, for these examples in California, they do have minimum sick pay that is required for employees. And as of 2025, even if you have only one employee, you must offer them the opportunity to participate in CalSavers. Now, the employee can opt out, and it doesn't cost you anything extra financially, although it will take more administrative time for you to handle. Are you going to offer reimbursements? So for instance, if you ask a nanny to take your child to school or maybe to a park, or maybe you're having them run errands for you, picking up groceries or running to the post office, you should be reimbursing them for the mileage that they are incurring on their vehicle. And also, again, if they're making purchases for you, unless you give them cash up front, obviously they would need to provide receipts, and then you could reimburse them for any expenses that they're paying out of pocket. What about bonuses or raises? So if you're hiring someone as a nanny, often the plan is they're going to be working with you for more than 1 year. So for instance, if you have a new baby in the home and someone is going back to work and you need to have that care, you probably want them to be around until the child goes into preschool or elementary school, or maybe still continue on even after they've started school based on the hours that they still need to be home with somebody when the parents are away. So if they're going to work for you for multiple years, what is the schedule for any increases that you're going to offer? And how are you going to determine them? Are they performance-based or just a cost of living? You want to make sure that you have figured out these things so that you can offer a package to the potential employee so that they are aware of everything that you are offering to them. Now, I also suggest that you put everything in an employment contract. Spell out all the details in writing to avoid any misunderstandings. For instance, again, the amount of money that they're going to earn. When is the pay period? Is it direct deposit or is it a physical check? Are you going to ask them to do duties for you, such as laundry or food prep, grocery shopping, driving to or from school or activities? We want to make sure that there's no misunderstandings at all and everyone knows exactly what is expected. Now, you may also want to have in your contract termination terms. Now, many states do have where you can leave at any time without notice, and you as an employer could also terminate without any notice if necessary. But ideally, you could have where they would give you notice or you could give them notice, because once again, if you have a child who needs care, if somebody doesn't give notice, it could put you into a difficult position. On the other hand, if you no longer need someone and you don't even give them notice, it's going to make it difficult for them because now they have to find additional employment and it could potentially financially cause some issues for them. So ideally, you will have in your contract some notice that could be given, although once again, you may not be able to actually require it. It's not a bad thing to at least have an agreement of what you would expect from each other. And also, are you offering any severance pay? This is especially important if someone has worked with you for many, many years, and now you don't need them because your children don't have to have that supervision any longer. So especially again, if you're going to have someone for multiple years, maybe you have a graduating scale based on how many years they work with you, what that severance pay might look like. Of course, confidentiality is extremely important. Keep personal and financial information private. Whether you are bringing someone on as an employee or an independent contractor, you should be asking them for documentation, which is going to give, of course, their legal name, address, their tax ID number, maybe if it's direct deposit bank account information that you are, going to be receiving. So it's extremely important to keep everything safe and secure. Now, I want to go over what the IRS guidelines are regarding the employee and contractor status, because once again, many people think, well, I'll just bring someone in my home. I'll just pay them, they're going to earn $1,000 a week. I'll write them $1,000 check. They don't have to be on as employees. The IRS has factors that they look at to determine if someone should be an employee or if they can be an independent contractor. And they fall into three categories: behavioral control, financial control, and relationship of the parties. In a household position, the family usually has control of when the person works, what they do, and how they do it, which gives proof to an employee-employer relationship. But even if you're not looking at those guidelines, the IRS does have a rule that says if a person will earn more than $2,700 in 2024, they should be an employee. And an audit may happen accidentally if, when your employment ends with the person that has cared for your child or other dependent in your home, they may think that they qualify for unemployment benefits. And if they go to file and they were not on as an employee, there will be no record of them as an employee. There'll be no unemployment insurance that has been paid for them, and they will be denied benefits, and that will trigger an audit for you. They will come and look to see, did they really perform duties that fall into the category of an employee relationship? And if so, you can be penalized for multiple years for not having them on as they should have been. So I highly caution you that if you do have someone working in your home, that you do bring them on as an employee, even though it will be more costly for the taxes and the workers' compensation, because it could save you in the long run by preventing an audit. Now let's talk about record keeping as well. Like, what should you keep? Well, first of all, you should have timesheets. especially if you're paying a worker hourly. Again, if you're ever audited, this will show when they worked. And so there won't be extra hours claimed on an unemployment claim versus what they actually worked in your home. Also, save proof of any estimated tax payments that you make, any Schedule H returns, receipts for reimbursements, any of the information that might be used in an audit, whether it is an income tax audit or an employment audit. You also would want to make sure that you have this in a safe place. So if you're saving documents on your computer, make sure you also have a backup. That could be Dropbox or a Google Drive. You could have an outsourced like IT provider who has it go to the cloud. It could also be just another hard drive that you plug into your computer, you back up the information, and you have it in a safe place. You just want to make sure that the data on your computer and the backup is not in the same location in case there is something that happens in your home, such as a fire or a flood that could damage both. Okay, so I wanted to go back over estimated tax payments and have you understand exactly what that is. And I can't say that it exactly falls on the quarter. You would think that if you say, oh, it's due quarterly, it would be due every third month. Although they basically call them quarterly estimated tax payments, they don't fall exactly every 3 months. So the first one for the year would be due in April. The second one is due in June. The third one due in September. And then the last one is due in January of the following year. Basically, this has you determine what you think your tax liability is going to be and making that amount each quarter so that you don't end up with a big liability at the end of the year. If you have a lot of tax due and you didn't make these payments, you could be penalized for failing to make these estimated tax payments timely. Again, workers' compensation also is important. Make sure that you have coverage for your employee in case they are injured on the job. Once again, homeowners policies usually do not cover anything that is related to work compared to if someone were just coming to your home and had a trip and fall because they were visiting and as they were leaving, they slipped and fell. So make sure that you have that coverage. Again, that would cover any expenses for any medical treatments that are required in case of an emergency or any type of injury. Okay, so in summary, I also recommend again that you have an employee-employer relationship because again, the behavioral control, financial control, or relationship of the parties determines that this really is an employee relationship. So again, behavioral control is who controls who is going to do the work? How is the work going to be done? Do you ask it to be done a certain way? That definitely shows factors that are employment. In terms of financial control, it is who is in control of the money decisions. In this case, you usually are determining what you're going to pay the worker, how often you're going to pay, how you're going to pay, and they don't really have any control of that. So that again is another factor showing an employee-employer relationship. And finally, relationship of the parties basically says, how do you see each other? Do you see each other as independent completely from each other? And even if you do, the IRS is not required to follow how you see yourself in this relationship. So once again, even if you both feel that independent contractor works, the IRS or your state could come in and say, nope, you actually were an employee-employer relationship. So again, err on the side of caution if you want to protect yourself. Again, agree on all aspects of the position and put it in writing to avoid any misunderstandings. Make sure you're filing your reports and paying taxes on time, and keep employee records in the event of an audit. So I know this can be really confusing, and you may not really want to have to deal with an employee because calculating the salaries, the taxes, filing the returns, it can be confusing, but we can help. Although a Schedule H is only done on your tax return and doesn't need to be filed, the state usually requires those returns to be basically the tax paid quarterly and reports filed. So we can help you with that. You can give us a call at 310-534-5577 or reach out to us at contact@abnp.com. We'll find out from you exactly how often you're paying and give you that quote for the service that we offer. And it's simple. You won't have to stress or worry at all. We will handle it all for you. So make sure that you're in compliance, hire your employee, and let us help you. So I hope you found this topic informative and it gave you some additional information on what you need to consider when you are hiring someone in your home as a nanny to care for your child. Again, if you have any additional questions, be sure to reach out to us 310-534-5577 or contact@abnp.com. All right, thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abnp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.